Good morning and welcome to the Less Than Yesterday show. I'm your host, Joe Braymeyer, with my extra special guest, Richie Creamer, Wilton's own, of course, Wilton's own Richie Creamer. Mr. Wilton, I would say. Before we get to you, Richie, I gotta do some plugs here, and I can't even remember them all because we finally are on a true podcast platform.
Cool.
So if you're a podcaster, you can check us out on Spotify, Less Than Yesterday, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon Podcasts. We're everywhere now. And please, for the love of the good Lord in heaven, hop on TikTok and follow the Joe Braymeyer, because as soon as we get to 1,000 followers, we're going to go live, and we'll be able to do this same live stream on TikTok as opposed to just Facebook and the Treadmill Heroes YouTube channel. Oh, and one more. Let's get that Joe Braymeyer YouTube subscription up so we can go live on there and hop off the Treadmill Heroes YouTube, because I'd like to reserve that for just repair videos and how-to, and we'll just stick to the podcast on the Joe Braymeyer thing. So you can find us on all of those, and certainly right here on Facebook. Good morning, Richie.
Good morning.
It's so good to have you in here.
Why, thank you.
When I think of you, I just think of a Wilton figurehead, like you're a Wilton guy, right?
Well, I try. And, you know, when you said Mr. Wilton, I was actually born in Wilton. I don't know if you knew that, at the house that I live now.
I didn't know that.
Yep. So my folks tore down the old house in 1995. And, but yeah, I was born in 1977, right where I live now.
Like in the tub?
Well, no, in the bedroom, but yeah, I was actually born at home. So if you look at my my birth certificate, it says Davenport, Iowa, and then it's scratched out, and it says 209 Cherry Street, Wilton, Iowa.
Was Doc Wetstein still in the picture back then? Do you know, was there like a doc that came over?
There was not. It was just the neighbors, like Bill Holliday, Linda Chapman, John Reif, and his wife Carolyn. They came over, and that's how I was delivered, was right there at home. I was an accident.
How does that even work? Like,
something about there was a blizzard that night or something, but yeah, I was born at home.
How did they even cut the umbilical cord?
I don't know. All I know is my dad drove them to Davenport, and that's where they finished me out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they probably snipped it there.
Yeah, but I'm as Wiltonite as they come.
My gosh. I didn't know that. What a cool story. I don't know, for whatever reason, when I think of Richie Creamer, like I think I would just take a step back if I ran into you anywhere but in Wilton, right? Like if I bumped into you in the Quad Cities, I'd be like, whoa, what are you doing out of Wilton? You know?
You're not wrong. I until I started this school bus thing, I didn't get out of Wilton very often.
You're driving a lot these days.
I am. Last night I was in Eldridge. I drove the wrestling team up there for a scrimmage.
You're like the new Sam Mullins.
Yeah.
How many years did Sizzlin' Sam run that bus barn?
Oh, we were trying to figure that out the other day. I don't know. He was there for quite a while, and then before him, you had Steffens.
Don Steffens ran it. Yeah.
Yep.
It's kind of a big torch to pass on to you.
It is, and then I took over from. Well, there was Ryan Lilienthal, and then there was Tim Imhoff. Imhoff took over for a little bit, and then there was another guy. I won't mention him. But anyway, but I took over after Ryan, and it's quite the task. Ryan was there, I think, 2017-ish. Wow. But no, it's a lot. But until I took the bus driving job, I didn't leave Wilton.
How long have you been in charge of that?
I think this is my third year almost completed. So so I started at the end of, I think it was 2021, and then I finished out that school year and then took over from there.
So for the people watching right now, they're like, what the hell are these guys talking about? You run the bus operation for the Wilton Community School District.
Correct. And Durant.
Yes. I didn't know that.
Yep. So there are 10 buses in Durant. There's 9 out here. And then we have 11 cars, and I think there's 10 or 11 cars in Durant as well.
Do you do all the coordinating too?
All the coordinating, all the maintenance. We do it all.
How many drivers do you have, and how many do you still need?
I need more. I think currently I'm at 37 drivers, but some are car drivers, some are bus drivers. And I need more, especially for sports.
Holy smokes. So you have to do all the coordinating for all the buses, all the cars. So in other words, if I'm the band teacher and we have a thing somewhere, they just reach out to you and then you figure it out?
Yep, they reach out and we figure it out. I do have help. Joy Garrels, she helps take care of the vans, and so that's all done through her on that aspect if they need a van, but if they need the bus, it all goes through me. But yet I still have to maintenance those vans and make sure they're ready to go.
That's like 3 full-time jobs in one.
It's a lot. I mean, I got Tim Imhoff. He helps me with the maintenance a little bit, but that helps.
Is he your right-hand man?
Oh yeah.
So if you're down for the count, let's say you stub a toe and you're laid up for a week, who's going to take over?
He'd be it.
He's the guy.
Yep.
Wow.
And like I say, he did it for about 4 months before me, and he did okay, so he can handle it.
You were looking around the shop here. You're kind of into some pop culture stuff too, right? You're into some collecting different things.
Yep.
What's your vice? What do you really love?
Well, like I say, I used to be into Ertl Farm Toys a little bit, but that got expensive in a hurry, and I had to give that up. But otherwise, like I said, shot glasses. I really like shot glasses. But the one thing that I really enjoy the most is anything that I drove, anything that I've operated or been on, I want. So like I've got a Dodge Charger because I had a 2017 Dodge Charger. I've got dump trucks. I've got garbage trucks. I've got backhoes. Anything little toy. Yeah, it can be big toy. I don't care. As long as it was something that I've owned or operated, I want the model of it just so I can say, hey, I drove that.
That's pretty cool. So it's not necessarily from a value standpoint or anything like that. It's just like I drove that same thing. I like to look at it up on the shelf. It's almost kind of like a little token to say, the more tokens you have, the more different types of machinery you've driven.
Yep, just something different, something. Everybody's got a collection of some sort, but I just wanted something that's what I did, man. I drove that. So I'm looking for a few things. So like I had a 1988 Chevy S10 lowrider back in the day. I don't know if you ever remember that.
I know what an 88 S10 is, but I don't remember it being when approximately what year was that?
I would have had that somewhere around 94, 95.
Okay.
And anyway, it was a black lowrider. I had a sun visor on it. I had a bug shield. It had a hood scoop. I mean, it was mint. But anyway, I only had 2 inches of ground clearance, and the steering wheel was just this little go-kart steering wheel, but little 5-speed. And anyway, I've been looking for an 88 S10 that I can turn into this thing.
Whatever happened to it? Do you remember?
I actually sold it for a motorcycle. Bill Holliday, his son-in-law at the time, had a motorcycle that he wanted to get rid of, and this S10 didn't get around very well in the winter, and so I'm like, I want that motorcycle. And so we kind of talked, and next thing I know, he's got my truck, and I have his bike, and away we went.
It was an even swap.
Yep. It was a 1991 Kawasaki Zephyr 750, and I'm like, that's the bike I want. It was kind of a drag racing bike.
Is that long gone now, too?
Oh, yeah, it's long gone.
That's too bad.
So,
man, wouldn't it be neat to get that S10 back, though?
Oh, it would. I mean, I loved that thing. It was just a little 4-cylinder, but, I mean, it was just something unique and different. I never liked to own vehicles that look the same as everybody else's. So, I mean, the truck that I've got in the parking lot out here, it's just an F-150, but no, I'm like, I can't have it look like everybody else's, so I put those F-250 mirrors on there. And so I've always said I don't have an F-150, I have an F-200, because I couldn't afford the other 50. So.
Well, you're a unique guy, so I think that's very fitting. You don't know what happened to the S10, right?
I have no idea.
It's kind of like I'd love to find the old Joe Chauvin. I'd love to know what creek bed that thing is laying upside down in. I'd love to be able to find that, even if it's just completely rotted.
Oh yeah.
It'd be neat to bring it back to life.
Yep. And I mean, things that I've operated. So, the trolleys down at Midwest Old Thrashers, Tim Imhoff and I are we used to be in charge of it, but we operate the trolleys down there at Midwest Old Thrashers.
Like the old trolley cars.
Yep, the old street cars, the old electric ones.
You're pretty well known as like a professional driver at this point, right?
Pretty much. I mean, I try. I'm not saying professional, but I can drive.
But people will people randomly reach out to you to say, hey, I know you drive this, so therefore I was looking for a guy to do that.
Yep, I've driven a few party buses for a few people. They got a bus and they need a driver, and so here I come. And the Quad City Steamwheelers, I've driven for them on their tour bus. I've taken them down to
Really?
Tulsa, and I mean, when I first seen the tour bus, the charter bus, I'm like, oh, that looks huge. I don't know if I can handle that. And then I had one of my school buses over there getting worked on where it's parked over at Walcott Collision, and I'm like, I can handle that. It's only 3 foot longer. And so I took it for a little drive, and I'm like, I can do this. And so next thing I know, I ended up in Tulsa. And
how cool is that?
And let me tell you, when you're taking when you haul football players for Wilton or Durant, you've got big guys back there, but they're not big. You take these guys, they're big. I mean, it's a whole different group of guys, and they're loud and obnoxious, and then next thing you know, it gets after the game and you don't hear them the whole way home. But
why is that? They're just shot.
They're just shot.
Yeah.
But these are some big guys, and so I mean, I'd like to go to that next step and just see how much bigger they get for like professional. You know what I mean? I mean, these guys are professional, but I want to see. Can you imagine standing next to the old fridge from the Bears? I mean,
no, I can't.
I mean, that's how big these guys are, and you go from little high schoolers to full-grown men, and it's a whole different group.
I suppose it's true. Like we were talking a little bit about WWE because, I'm a huge nerd when it comes to that, and I think you're kind of a fan as well. But I think it's the same thing. You see these people on TV, and because they're all that size, it's just the norm. But when you see them out in real life, you're like, dang, that dude is huge.
Yep. I mean, they just grow. And I'll never forget there was one guy sitting behind me, and there's a piece of plexiglass between us, but I turned on the light one night, and there's this big guy behind me, and he just had this, I don't know, I'm going to kill you look on his face. And he was watching some video, but it just his face, I mean, it just scared the crap out of me. I mean, it was like 2 a.m, but he was just a big guy, and when you turn on that light and you're not used to seeing these big guys behind you, it just kind of, whoa, and I kind of swerved off the road a little bit.
Well, they're right after the game, like when you go down to Oklahoma with the Steamwheelers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they just shower and you hop right back on the bus and you head back?
Pretty much, yeah. Yep.
And do you don't drive down that day? I'm assuming you drive the day before?
No, so we drove down on like Thursday, and then on Friday they did a practice. I ended up taking them to a city park, and they did a practice, and we actually got in trouble because there was some Frisbee golf tournament going on, and we parked in the middle of their course, I guess. And so I had to move the bus, and they had to adjust where they were practicing. But these are some big boys, and the guy came over, and he's like, can you move your bus? And so anyway, I ended up taking him to a city park, and then from there I took him out for supper, and then we went back to a YMCA kind of deal, and they practiced a little bit, and then we went to the game the next day, and then from there, out we went.
Let's get a little nostalgic here. When did you graduate Wilton?
I graduated in 1996.
96, so you're definitely an 80s kid.
Oh, yeah. So I was with Corey Stanley and people like that kind of Ron Ovison.
Were you in Buck Woodward's class?
He was a year behind me.
Man, I don't give that guy enough props because he was the one that I got into doing the W because I was like in junior high and I saw him out in front of the whole crowd.
Yep.
And he would do the W, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to get out in front of everybody, and I don't think he gets enough credit because did he start the Gimme a W?
Oh yeah, and he wasn't afraid to go out there and make a fool of himself to get the entertainment. I mean,
yeah,
he was just a free soul. I mean, he'd just get out there and do his thing.
Because as far as I can remember, he was the only one that did it. Nobody did the Gimme a W before him, right?
That.
Was that his own thing? Somebody prompt him to do it?
It might have started with the cheerleaders, but I think he just, one day I'm going to go out and I'm just going to do it.
I don't know. We lost Buck quite a few years ago, but he left that little mark there up at the school. And I don't know. I felt like I was never able to do it as good as he could do it, but I don't know, just a little piece of him I carry around with me. It's kind of cool.
Like I say, he just wasn't afraid to go out and do his thing. He just figured if people didn't like it, don't listen to me. But he went out and he wanted to entertain. That was what his thing, kind of like you.
Take me back to the perfect 80s summer in Wilton for Richie Creamer. Specifically, like details. What comes to mind?
Probably back before the curb and gutter, we had ditches back in the day, and we'd all take our bicycles and ride through the ditches when it would rain because they'd flood. And we got yelled at so much for tearing up people's ditches.
Well, because it would leave tire tracks in the yards.
Oh, yeah. It would leave ruts. The ditches were deep, and so you just take your bike, and next thing you know, you're handlebar deep in water. And so anytime it would rain real heavy and we could go out in the ditches, that was the thing to do.
Is it just me, or is there less kids riding bikes around today than there was?
There's not near as many now. I mean, working for the city, I was out and about a lot when I was working for the city. And, yeah, you could just slowly see it where the kids weren't outside. They were inside, you know. When I was a kid, yeah, you've seen the bikes dumped in front of somebody's house, and that's where everybody was. You didn't have to call them up and say, hey, where are you at? You rode around town and
saw their bike.
Saw a pile of bikes, and next thing you know, you knocked on the door and you were part of the club, you know. So you didn't have to call and see where they were. I was a South Ender. I still am. And so essentially it was, Steve Wiley was down by the Cherrydale Park, you know, so, I mean, you'd go down by the park and you could always find somebody. And we played in the creek down there a lot.
Oh, Mud Creek was an untapped treasure for so many people. Like, there was only a small pocket of kids in each generation that went down to Mud Creek, but there was like a bike path down there with jumps and everything, right?
There was, yep. And if you went over by the ag farm, Bronner's had an area that was for motorcycles because they had a little, I don't know if they were 80s or what they had, but Bronner's, I just remember they had trails back in there along the creek by that bridge, and heck, we'd take our bikes back in there. But yeah, I mean, and Borden's didn't always own it. It was Mondays before that, and when his mom was alive, Jerry Monday's mom was alive, you'd get yelled at for going down there.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And the ball diamond where you got it now, where the boys' diamond is, that was field when I was a kid. We only had one diamond.
You're talking Cherrydale?
Cherrydale, yeah, excuse me. But we'd get in trouble for going out into a cornfield or bean field to get the ball back.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Man.
It was a fun time, man. Cherrydale actually at one time was the JC Park, if I remember right, because we used to have a Wilton JC's. And I remember they put in the slide and the swing set and all that was down there. Remember them big metal slides that Wilton had, one there, one at the City Park, and one at Westview.
That one at City Park would torch you.
Yes,
you would be scalded by the time you got down to the bottom of that thing.
Yes, it would.
No one ever went down that fast.
No,
you couldn't.
You couldn't.
Unless you were in a potato sack.
Yep, or a piece of wax paper under you. But yeah, that was actually put in by the JCs back in the day at Cherrydale.
You know what I wish I could have got my hands on, and it was just years before Dad and I started collecting, was City Park had, you know, the playground spring toys you rock back and forth. They had a four-way where it was like two animals on each side, and so four kids could bounce back and forth on that
it was
thing.
There by the shelter house.
Yeah.
Les McGowan ended up with that back in the day. I don't know what he did with it since.
Oh, really?
I tore that out.
So Les had it.
Uh-huh.
We got to track that thing down. Guys, help me track that thing down. I know Dad and I have been lightening up the collection lately, but that would be a neat piece. I can't imagine it's still all together. I got to imagine that the animals probably got taken off of the base.
Yep.
The base probably got, I mean, even if there's an animal, I remember there was like a ram. And because some of those, no one wanted to ride the horse because you'd rack yourself on the mane, right?
Yeah, you didn't.
But you had like the snail or the lion with the big head, and you could really hold on tight to that thing.
Yep.
And you wouldn't get killed while you're riding it.
Right. the big metal slide at one time, I think that ended up out at Darris Cracklio's.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know whatever happened to it from there.
We got to find it.
I'm telling you, man, I've done a lot through the city. I mean, the light, it ended up down at your dad's when we took out the light there at Chestnut and 5th.
That's right. And there it is, leaning up against the building.
Yeah.
We need to paint that and hook it up or do something with it.
I mean, I've a lot of Wilton history, man. I've either taken it out or put it in.
Did you go to work for the city right out of high school?
I actually was there during high school. So I started through JTPA, job training program that was through the school. And, well, anyway, I worked for 2 weeks there. I worked for Pioneer, and then I worked for 2 weeks for the city. And the guys liked me enough, I guess, that's what they tell me. Anyway, and then the next thing you know, I started working on Saturdays, opening up their gate for the dump. And because nobody wanted to work Saturdays.
Right.
So it was 5 hours a week. I started at $4.65 an hour. And and then during the summer, they hired me to come in and throw garbage. And we didn't always have the garbage truck we have now that lifts it. We used to lift it by hand, and there was no weight limit. There was no volume limit. We threw the stuff.
About the bottom half of the garbage cans full of grass shavings and that are soaking wet, and then a little bit of trash on top to cover it up.
If you were lucky, it was just grass shavings.
Yeah. I bet you saw some stuff.
Oh, boy. Oh, yeah.
Who was your first mentor at the city when you first got hired?
That's a tough one, but I don't know if you remember Harold Snyder.
I don't know if I'd be able to pick him out of a lineup. Certainly I know the name.
So there's a story about Harold. I remember that he had a refrigerator that he bought here in town. I don't remember what the business was, but anyway, he hauled it around because he called it a lemon. But anyway, and everybody always said he was so cantankerous and hard to get along with and tight with his money. And I tell you what, I started down there at the city, and that man just took me in under his wing. And back in the day, we didn't always have the equipment we have now. So my first job was going down Oak Street with a flat shovel, shoveling up the rock that was left over from the seal coat, and we shoveled that into a pickup, and then we went down to the city shop and started shoveling it off.
And then reused it.
It just went into a pile. I don't know whatever happened to it.
Wait a minute. So this was pre-curb and gutter.
Yep.
Right? So the roads it was kind of just tar and gravel all
just
the time.
Like they are now. They're just the seal coat.
Yeah.
But so to kind of put it into perspective, so they would seal coat it, and then it would sit there for a couple of weeks to kind of get beat into the road. And then before the winter, we would go out and try and pick up the loose gravel so it didn't end up in your yard. Well, before the street sweepers, we had one. It was an old Pelican, but if it started, it was a great day. But anyway, Harold Snyder, myself, Doug Bolt, and Shane Bourne, we went down the road with flat shovels, and we would scrape the road and toss it into the truck. Scrape the road, toss it in the truck. And so you would go all the way down Oak Street.
The whole town?
The whole town.
That had to have been truckloads of loose gravel.
It sucked. So.
And then where did the gravel go? You just take it down to the dump?
Down to the dump and dumped it off. If we got lucky, we got to use the 1-ton that had a tilt bed. But Jerry Smith would be out with the street sweeper, and he would try to get what he could, and then we'd go out, or he'd leave piles because this thing just dumped it on the ground. So we'd have to go shovel up the pile.
Boy, the city got their $4 an hour worth out of you guys, didn't they?
Yes, they did. We used to do things all kinds of different back then. And, we had a line of flat shovels along the wall, and they got used.
And so. from there, you worked for the city forever.
I did. So,
you were Mr. City employee.
Yeah, so all through high school, I worked for the city. And so then right out of high school, I got full-time. And then just recently here, within the last 3 years, quit the city. And it was tough. It was real tough to leave that job. I loved it. I loved the people. I loved the interaction. One of the reasons that I got out, I don't know if you noticed, I ended up with skin cancer. And
no, where?
Right up here, I ended up losing my tear duct. And
you do have a little scar up there.
And so that was one reason. And then the other one is I just wanted a challenge. I mean, I'd been doing the same thing for years. And it was a challenge. Every day was something different because you were always operating something different, always doing something different, except for garbage day, obviously. But I just felt that I needed to prove to myself I could do something different. And so when the school job come open, I remember calling Mr. Burdett, and I'm like, do I have, I don't have any college. Do I have a chance at this thing, And he goes, put it in an application. Okay, so I did. And so, yeah, then I got an interview, and next thing you know, I had the job, and I'm like, I just quit the city.
Yeah, that had to have been wild, because you'd know that was the only job you've known, right?
Yeah.
You did a million things for the city, but that was your home, right?
Yep, and worked with a lot of great people. I mean, Jerry Smith, Dale Kramer. I mean, he worked for us a little bit. But we had Marv Croson, and I mean, I can just throw names out left and right. But yeah, Harold Snyder really was my mentor at the time, and then Brian DeVore, and we did some strange things back in the day. I mean, I remember, I don't know if you ever remember seeing me drag a whole tree down the road behind the backhoe because our chipper was broke down, or we sold it, or we just didn't feel like cutting it up. So we'd drag the whole tree down the road and throw it on the burn pile.
From your perspective, how vital, well, we know how vital the infrastructure of any city is, or any small town. But when you look at a town like Wilton, there's just a small handful of people who work for the city that make the infrastructure work. Yep. I mean, I don't know, just how hard is that for that small pocket of people?
Well, so you see all the time, I think I posted this one time on Facebook. You see where it says the city crew, plowed the snow. It's a crew. There's not this massive snow crew. There's not a garbage crew. It's the crew, and those guys don't get enough credit for what they do, because you're going from garbage. Next thing you know, you're snow plowing, and then from there you're at the sewer and water plant helping Creamer with the sewer plant, and then from there you're sucking up leaves or whatever. I mean, there's just always something different, and so you don't spend your whole day doing one job. You're bouncing from job to job to job.
When people get on like the Wilton chat and they'll say something, I mean, because aren't we supposed to get a big winter blast here in the next week or so? Hopefully it's at least halfway being gaslit, because it sounds like it's going to be horrendously cold and some really bad weather. So hopefully that's only about a half truth. But when you see people on the Wilton chat, or just in general out in public, going, boy, they couldn't find a better spot to pile that up at, or I couldn't even get out of my driveway this morning. Is it hard not to take it personally, even though you don't work for the city anymore?
It is. One thing I like now is when it snows, hey, it's not my problem anymore. I'd gladly go help them anytime they need it. But anyway, I do enjoy not having to come out at 2 a.m. to clean the downtown. Because that's the other thing, is they'll go plow, and then that next morning they got to come in and clean the downtown. And if it snows, they got to plow in between there and still try to get the downtown clean for the businesses. And so there's just the 5 guys, and you're trying to clean the streets, clean the downtown, and do your normal garbage, recycle, all those fun things.
All that is on the backs of 5 dudes.
Yep.
I mean, obviously you've got admin, you've got coordinating, you've got all this stuff, but you have doing the physical work of it.
Yeah.
From the leaf pickup to the snow plowing to the street sweeping, to all of that, it's 5 guys.
Yep. So, like I say, you do the garbage, and the next thing you know, you're plowing snow, and then it's just one thing after another, and you do it until it's time to go home, because you finally got to a stopping point. It was a lot of 8 hours and go home until something happened, but yeah, if it snowed, that screwed up our whole day.
All right, so if we get this big winter blast, and we know the guys are working their butts off clearing the streets and making sure that everything gets back to normal as quick as possible, how do people drop off a bunt cake? Like where do they go to say, here, give this to the guys?
Probably to City Hall, because you're not going to find them at the city shop if you got something like that going, because unless something's broke, they're in the trucks. It takes a minimum 4 hours to plow the town. Minimum.
Hey, somebody put some barbecued beef in a crock pot, right? Bring that in. I got to imagine even at 5 a.m, a barbecue beef sandwich would taste pretty good after you've been up since 1 a.m. clearing snow.
Because, I mean, you figure we're driving around 10 to 15 mile an hour, and you don't think about how big this town is, but you drive 10 to 15 mile an hour and try to go up and down each street twice, and that's a day.
Is that the protocol? You got to do it. Well, you got to do each side.
That's what I mean. You got to do each side. So to do one pass, go down the road, and then you basically work your way up to the north end and turn around and come back. And then when you get done with north-south, go east-west. If you happen to have all 4 trucks out, things went faster. But say it's a weekend and you can only get 2 guys in, well, you plow the whole town up and down, up and down. It gets old in a hurry. And each stop sign, you got to kind of do a slow and go, because you can't really stop, because if it's a heavy snow, then you got to back up and go again. But it's a lot.
Let's say time stops in Wilton. They don't need Richie Creamer for 2 weeks, right? And somebody hands you $20,000. Go have some fun. Go do your thing.
I'd be gone.
Where would you go? What would you do? If you had to you got to make a decision in 30 seconds to go and do whatever you want for 2 weeks. What would you go do?
I'm headed for Florida.
Are you?
I don't know why. Just something I want to do.
Have you ever been?
I have. I took my son down to Jacksonville at one time. He wanted to be a underwater welder, and so we took him down and checked out some college down there, and it was neat. And then he ended up breaking his leg, and so he's still a welder, but he's just not doing the diving.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet an underwater welder makes some pretty good cheese.
It was. He was looking into, it was the big dive bell and all that around your head. This wasn't just goggles. And so, like I say, he was going to go into this thing. And so when we toured that college, it was pretty neat. But like I say, he's still welding. He's traveling, doing industrial kilns now, like GPC's got the grain dryers and stuff. So he's fixing those things. But, yeah, when we went down there, it was just nice, and I'll never forget. We ended up taking the road there along the coast, and we ended up in Panama City there, and it was spring break.
Oh boy, that's too bad.
Yeah, and there's this guy that was walking around with a solo cup, and next thing you know, he drops it in the road, and I'm like, we're gonna stop. And my wife and my kids, Peg got it after a while, after she figured out that the guy was chasing a cup. But some of those parties down there, your solo cup, that's your ticket for the beer, man. You had to buy the cup for like $200.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm like letting this guy chase it down, and
it's literally just an empty solo cup, but you know that without that he's out the money.
Yeah, he's got to go buy himself another cup, and that was expensive. But anyway, my son, he's sitting in the back, and he had just graduated, and we stopped, and there's all these people on the beach, all these girls, and I says, Rick, how's it feel to be with your mom and dad during spring break?
Bummer.
I said, you want me to stop and let's go check out the beach? And he's like, if you stop, he says, I'm walking home. He goes, I'm not going to be here with mom and dad. And I says, you sure? There's a pretty girl right there. You sure you don't want to get out? Nope. And so then my wife starts in on him, and he's like, will you guys just drive? And I says, man, it's Panama City. We got to stop. No, he would not get out of that car. He's like, I'm not getting out with mom, dad, and my little brother.
That's great.
And so yeah. But no, if I could, I'd go back to Florida just to have fun. I got to go out and see the gators. We got on an airboat and got to see the gators and that kind of thing when we were down there. And I think that's something I'd do again.
Well, hopefully you get a chance. I'm sure you will, right? Well, I don't think there'll be a time where the school district says, hey, Richie, we don't need you for 2 weeks, right?
I was going to say, I've got a lot of vacation time now, and I don't know when I'd ever use it.
Do you typically don't cash in on vacation time?
No, I need to start using it, but and I've been trying to get a break during Christmas break here, but there's just so much to do. I've always got something to fix or something to. You've got a fleet yourself of cars. And so, it's always, there's tires, there's brakes, there's shocks, there's something.
Yeah. It's such a pain in the butt to drive them down to dad's and say, please fix this for me.
Yep. See, I don't have,
you don't have a Doug Brameyer in your back pocket.
Well,
hopefully I always do. Yeah.
I've pulled a few of those cards. I'm like, hey, Doug, this one needs brakes. This one needs tires. Can you do that? And I can farm out a little bit of stuff. And that was one that I farmed out recently. I'm like, hey, Doug, this car needs tires. You want to do that? So,
in all seriousness, though, you are a workaholic. You take a lot of pride in your work. You don't come across as the guy that calls in sick unless you're on your deathbed. And I don't think you take vacation time because if you do, it's just going to pile up and you're going to have to deal with it when you get back, right? There isn't you've got some people that are in your support system, but there's not a Richie Creamer counterpart in Wilton.
Well, I will admit the city got along just fine without me, but my problem is I have a hard time saying no. So the Boy Scouts, I was in charge of that since 2004 until here a couple of years ago. I did the Historical Society, that Freedom Rock. I was part of that. The flag out here on the edge of town. I mean, I've just never been one to say no, and that's one of my biggest problems. But when you say that I never take a day off, you're right, because I just feel like I've got to keep going. I got to keep doing it. In my old age, I've learned that I've got to slow down just a little bit. I mean, I've gotten a little squishier than I was when I was at the city. I've always been a big guy, but I've gotten a little squishier. But yeah, sometimes you just got to learn to say no and just take some time for yourself.
Am I wrong in saying or feeling that there is a large group of people that make the city and the town, or the city and the school district tick, that are getting a little bit older, and there's more people retiring than young people coming in and taking the baton and running with it? Or is that just a wrong perception?
It's all over town. I mean, you take the fire department, pretty much all the guys that I was on with for 17 years, I was on the fire department. Pretty much most of the guys that I were on with are gone, except for like Jamie Hall. I actually signed him up for the fire department.
Is he the chief?
He is the chief now. But the young people are not coming in to fill the void. I mean, my bus drivers, most of them are in their 60s. And, at the school, like you say, there's, people that are aging, and there's just not that group coming in behind. So
when I ran into you at Arnold's a couple weeks ago, that you said something to me, and I'm like, I gotta have Richie on the show, because you said, you're like, man, I need drivers. I need drivers bad. So tell me about that. Like, how bad is it? Or not bad, but how challenging is it right now?
So again, most of my drivers are in their 60s. I even have an 83, 84-year-old that drives for me in Durant. But the problem with it is you come in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, and you get your bus ready. You go out and do your route. 8 o'clock, you're back at the bus barn because you've dropped the kids off at the school. But then by 2:30, you got to be back and drive that bus for the afternoon. So unless you have a job that can, or self-employed, that you can use that flex, all I'm ever going to get is retired. And, even they don't want to be out that late at night. So then you get your sports that want to leave by 2:30. So I can't use my regular bus route people. So then I need guys like you that are self-employed that could possibly take some time off and start that bus at, 2:15, 2:20. Go pick them up, take them to, that's the other thing, is we're going further away. So you end up in Bellevue, you end up in Mid-Prairie, you end up in Sigourney sometimes, And so some nights it's 10, 11 o'clock at night before you get home, and with the bus, and then you got to go home yourself and then try to come back in and do it all again the next day.
And I suppose that's almost a little bit easier when it's warm and clear out at night, but when you start getting into the winter sports, man, that can be a grind.
Oh yeah. So there's nights I've been at basketball or wrestling, and next thing you know, the snow is coming down, something fierce, and you're like, can we go home now? I got to drive this thing, and I've got all these souls on my bus, and I'm holding the wheel, and if we go in the ditch, it's all on me. I mean,
regardless of weather conditions, road conditions,
yep.
the first eyes get put on the driver.
Yeah, exactly. And so on the buses, I have cameras now that are there to protect the driver as well as, for security reasons. But yeah, if you put that thing in the ditch, you better be ready to answer for why you did it, because people are like, hey, my little Johnny's on there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got to be careful. But when it's snowing out and you watch that snow just keep getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and you're like, we need to go home, and they're like, no, we still got wrestling matches to do, and there was one night I came home and I had to use a broom. I had to keep stopping and scrape the window with the broom, and then we'd get going again, and there'd be this little sliver of looking out the window.
Oh.
And the guys are like, how are you doing this? And I says, you ever driven a snowplow? I says, because that snow comes over, and the next thing you know, you can't see nothing,
I suppose that did help.
Oh,
that had to help with your experience, because how many years did you snowplow?
Oh,
long time, right?
time.
So yeah, that's got to help with driving the bus in some sketchy conditions.
I remember when I was 15 years old, they wanted the garbage truck washed, and mind you, they weren't automatics back then. They were sticks. And anyway, they wanted the garbage truck washed, and we had to take it around to the sewer plant to wash it. And Jerry Smith says to me, can you move that? I says, it's got wheels. I'll figure it out. And so at 15 years old, I was moving the garbage truck, the backhoe, a road grader. I was operating things that I had no business operating. And it was just one of those, make it move. Okay, so I'd get in, I'd start flipping switches, and I'm like, this makes this go, that makes that go. My favorite story on the road grader, though, and I know I'm bouncing around on you a little
No, I want to hear all this.
I went to put fuel in the road grader one day, and going down Highway 6, and somebody pulled out in front of me, and the road grader had no brakes. I didn't know that. And so anyway, I'm right there at
wait a minute, like the road grader doesn't have brakes, period, or the brakes went out.
The brakes did not work.
Okay.
And
unbeknownst to anybody.
Right.
Okay.
I hit the brakes, and I'm like, there's nothing. Well, at your intersection there to go up to your dad's, I ended up taking out the stop sign there because this car pulled out in front of me, and I'm like, oh, and I was just barely moving, but this was a big road grader. And anyway, to turn, not only did he have to turn the steering wheel, he had to turn pull this lever that would turn the wheels so that it would actually turn. And I ended up taking out the stop sign, almost took out the fire hydrant. And I'm like, stop. And I ended up putting the blade down on the highway because otherwise I was going up into the yard. And I just remember thinking, I'm 16 years old. I really shouldn't be in this thing. But and we got rid of it a few years after that because, it just was a beater. But we used that thing to scrape a lot of the ice off the roads and blade the roads, obviously. But
isn't it empowering when you're a younger kid, 15, 16 years old, and you get to drive something that no one else in your friend group or your age bracket gets to drive or gets to do?
And I used to get made fun of in the school because I was the garbage man during the summer. And I thought, if you guys really knew what all I get into, you'd be all over this job. And so Angela Voss, she actually worked at the city for a while. And, we had quite a few of them. A couple of the Andersons worked for us. And like I say, the Bournes. Some of the things you got to do, it was unique. It's stuff that just the average people don't get to do. And in high school, especially, these guys are like, oh, you're a garbage man. Yeah, but I went and operated a backhoe. What'd you do last weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, you just drove a little Chevy Chevette. I'm out operating a backhoe, or.
And not only that, but you just don't think of it because you hear the word garbage and garbage man, and you're like, oh man, that's a job I wouldn't want to do. Well, one, that's a job I think you can easily take a lot of pride in because without there again, the five guys working in this, doing this stuff for the city. Mm-hmm. Imagine if all garbage ceased to be picked up for 3-4 weeks. This town would look like a dystopia.
Oh yeah. And like I say, you see the sewer and water guys running around too, and everybody's like, they just drive around. No, they're going to this, they got to locate because you're going to dig a hole in your yard, and then they're going to another house to do a water meter, and then they're going to another one because somebody thinks they got a water leak and they got to check that out. These guys are not just driving around. You see them going around, but they're always going somewhere. They might be going to the water tower to do a reading. They might be going to do a sample at the sewer plant. You know, I mean, it's a lot of going.
I like to see some of the younger guys that are working for the city. Morgan is one of the guys that comes to mind.
He's a great guy.
Funny guy, cool guy. He used to work here for a while, and I always just thought he had a great personality. He just was one of those guys you really couldn't, you never really saw him in a bad mood. He was just kind of a Mr. Chuckles, you know, and when I see him working for the city, it just, I don't know, it makes me happy, and in a weird way. I'm not weird, but I'm just kind of proud of the guy. I'm just like, man, dude, you're doing something that is so vitally important to the infrastructure of Wilton. And I don't think, well, one, the 5 guys that are doing this, I don't think they have time to step back and think about it, nor do they want to. They're just working hard and doing their job. But I wish there was just a little bit more spotlight on those guys. There again, take some snacks down to City Hall if we have some terrible weather, man. Or like, even like the week after Thanksgiving or whatever, we're just like the garbage after Christmas, right? There's just tons of garbage. That's a lot, right? Well, isn't it like double the weight to move?
Oh yeah. But you know what's above beyond the garbage is the water main breaks. So you see the polar plunge and all that kind of stuff, you know, but you ever getting in the swimming pool and you're like, man, this is cold. Well, that water coming out of that water tower is like 52 degrees. And so then you dig on a below zero weather day to get down to that water main, and that water's shooting out. Next thing you know, you're covered in ice. And so the water's 52 degrees, but then you got the wind and the snow and all that other stuff along with it in the winter, and your hands are just freezing. And so there's times you'll actually stick your hands back in the water to warm them up because it's warmer in the water than it is out. But you know, that's a job. You're constantly wet and you're digging in the mud and you're falling on your butt because it gets icy and I mean, so
if you have if there is a water main break right now in Wilton, certainly Robert Creamer is going to get the call.
Yep.
Who else is with him?
Pretty much the
Wogman.
Whole, yeah, I guess Wogman's going. You name it. We just kind of we kind of call around the horn and say, hey, you know, you available? And next thing you know, if it's bad enough, you end up with almost the whole crew. But,
see, that's something that I don't think a lot of people realize, and I didn't realize that either. I keep going back to the 5 guys, but I mean, like, everybody does everything.
Yep. So you get pulled off garbage because we got a water main break, or you get pulled off of whatever because we got a water main break, and so depending upon how bad it is. Yeah, so I mean, that might take your whole day there too.
And then everything else gets backlogged.
Yep. And so then they try to get caught up, and you know, and it's a lot.
Wow. That's wild. You just don't think about all that stuff. And I mean, not that this needed to turn into a stroke fest for the city employees, but I mean, seriously, I mean, I just don't think people really realize it. And it's kind of nice to sit back and kind of break it down a little bit. Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
And you probably know this, and I could probably look it up, and I think I have. The other day, I was with the kids in the car, and they were like, how does the water tower work? Like, what is it for? How does it work? Like, Casey, you're back there. You can't see Casey. Could you explain how the water tower works and what its purpose is? I should be able to do that. I can't. Can you? Can you explain what the purpose is? Okay. Professor Richie, how does a water tower work and what is its purpose?
So have you ever seen those globe things with the real skinny, almost looks like a funnel, but it's a ball that goes into a plant? You fill it with water and you turn it upside down.
It looks like an ear sucker that you would use on a little kid. Okay, yes.
You turn that upside down, and as the plant needs it, the water comes out. All right. So there is one pipe that goes up, and that's it, just one pipe. There's not 2 pipes. It's not one up, one down. It's just one pipe. And so the plant, the water plant, has pumps, and they pump to a certain level of the water tower. And so
wait a minute. The water plant actually pumps water up into the water tower.
It pumps it into the whole system. Okay, so the whole system's a big grid, and the water tower accepts the extra water from it accepts the extra pressure. And so the water goes up into the water tower, And once the water tower's reached a certain level, so I know one of them 17 feet of water. So that one out there is 500,000 gallon. This one's 350,000 gallon. And so once it reaches a certain level, it shuts off the pumps at the water plant. And so then it goes into gravity mode. And so as you turn on your spigot, it starts to drain. And it keeps the pressure on the mains because of the elevation. So you're looking at anywhere from 40 to 70 PSI, if I remember right, of pressure on your water mains. And so that just keeps the whole town active. You can't get stagnant water.
So is the water tower's main purpose for emergencies?
Yeah, and it's storage, and then it's also the pressure to keep the water coming out your mains, out of your faucets, because without the pumps at the plant, then you wouldn't have any pressure. So the water tower, the elevation gives you pressure as well as storage of your water.
So, in other words, a power outage.
You would have roughly 1.5 days of storage right now.
For the town?
For the town.
But because we have two towers?
Yes.
And that accounts for both towers.
Right.
So if Wilton runs out of power, we have about a day and a half of running water for the town with normal average use.
Yeah, because if I remember right, it was like, basically one tower would carry us for a day.
So the water tower truly is for emergencies, essentially.
Yep.
But it also creates the water pressure so we're not constantly running pumps.
Right. And as well as that, say we have a fire in town, that's going to put out, you got everybody still pulling off the system. And so when you open that fire hydrant, you're opening a bigger valve, and we're taking lots of water. So it helps keep the plant caught up so that you don't get an uninterrupted water flow at your house.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Now we do.
Yeah, because the more water, the plant's able to put out like 1,200 gallon a minute. But like I say, you end up with the water tower. It gives you excess water that if everybody opened their tap at the same time, obviously the plant wouldn't be able to keep up. But the water tower helps keep the pressure going.
I like to ask this question to everybody that's in. What kind of...
Look at you. Your mind's blown over there.
I think I just never knew. I always figured it was like extra water. Like you're like, oh, well, that's extra water in case of an emergency. But I didn't realize how it all works.
It's also pressure. So,
all right, I asked my...
And no, I've never climbed one. I'm not that brave.
Oh, I don't think I could go up 4 rungs. Dude, I'm so scared of heights. If I stood on the back of this chair, I start to get uneasy.
If I remember right, the yellow one out there is 135 feet tall.
Has anyone ever climbed it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've seen John Fisher go up there. I've seen Creamer. I've seen Wagaman.
All the way up?
Oh, yeah.
What for? Is there like an access hatch?
Yeah, there's an access hatch. You actually crawl up between the bowl, in the middle of the bowl on that one. And
so the stem?
Yep.
So you can't look down. You're just climbing a ladder in an enclosed area?
So, yeah, it's just an enclosed pipe, and there's a ladder with little platforms in there, and so it's a straight up and down ladder, so you better have some muscle like you. So you're going up, and then you step onto this platform, and then you go up the next rung and the next rung, and when you get to the top, there's just a hatch up there, and flip the hatch open, and then there's a rail around the top, and
you know what would be cool is the next time I got to say something to either Robert or Wagman or whoever. Like, I think it'd be cool to strap a camera on them.
Yeah.
I'd love to get the footage from inside the water tower all the way up looking down. I bet it'd make you crap your pants.
Just a big pipe. So it's just that big. What you see on the outside, it looks the same on the inside, just around the inside of the tube. And then
could you do it if you had to? Could you climb up that thing if you had to?
One time I went up one rung and I'm like, yeah, I'm done. So, but on the old water tower, you climb on the outside.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah, you go straight up that side of the post, and then you end up climbing the bowl, and that bowl angles, and then there's a hatch at the top, and they actually get painted on the inside every so many years and inspected. So we drain them, and then a guy drops down in and inspects it. Yeah, that's one I'm not doing. I know Creamer's climbed the old tower. And we used to put Christmas lights up there. Can you imagine trying to hoist the Christmas lights up there?
Oh, dude, I'm getting uneasy just talking about it. I can't imagine.
But I know Creamer's been up there, and I know Hadrath was. But yeah, that's one I'm not going up.
What is your social media platform of choice?
Facebook.
Facebook's your jam.
I mean, I've still got Snapchat, Instagram, all those fun things, but otherwise Facebook. I mean, that's where all us old folks hang out.
Yeah. It's like the coffee hour.
Yep. So yeah, Facebook's my jam. And yeah, I do dabble in others, but that's...
Yeah, I'm sure you have like a TikTok account and stuff like that.
I've never posted, but I'm on there.
What's your rabbit hole you're going down these days?
You know,
everyone has a rabbit hole. Here's what's so interesting here.
Marketplace, man. Marketplace.
Yeah, but I'm saying like conspiracy theory rabbit hole, because you always ask people like, okay, what are like what's in your algorithm, like you're seeing and you're going, oh well, I never thought about that, but now I'm kind of thinking about it. You ask people about conspiracy theories sometimes, and it's almost like asking them if they smoke. They're like, oh no, I don't. I've never smoked before in my life, and it's like, no, it's okay. It's not taboo to say that you follow a couple little weird things. Like, do you got any quirky things you're kind of looking at?
Bigfoot, my man, Bigfoot.
Really?
Yeah, I've always been a Bigfoot kind of guy. I'd like to. That's one of the things I'd like to actually see Bigfoot be found in my lifetime. But
he has stood the test of time.
Yep.
Long before social media.
Oh yeah, but no, I'd like to see that. So I get some Bigfoot stuff now and again. I actually wonder if there is Sasquatches that are out in the wild, and sure.
there has to be, right?
I mean,
well, there doesn't have to be, but I mean, you got to figure. Can it all be fake?
Everybody likes cryptid, you know. I mean, there's the Mothman, all those different things, and so. But yeah, I like to watch, like the History Channel. It's, they got a thing on the Mothman, or they got a thing on Bigfoot, that's just my jam.
Are you a UFO guy? Are you watching all the drone things going on right now?
Oh yeah. And I'm sorry, Peggy. She hates it when I watch the alien stuff, because, then I end up having dreams, and she's like, you stop watching that stuff.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because you'll start to talk about it at home, and they're like, you sound like an idiot. Yep. You sound like a weirdo. And you're like, but I'm not the only weirdo out there looking at this stuff.
Yep. I mean, I like that ancient aliens thing on like Discovery Channel and History Channel and that. So yeah,
I'm watching all the drone stuff going on right on social media and stuff. You know what's wild is, for Christmas, my kids got a little $15 little drone thing, right? That one of their uncles got it for them. And it's just a little fan that's enclosed in a case, and you throw it in the air, and it has sensors in it, and it knows not to hit the ceiling, not to hit the walls. If you put your hand underneath of it, it goes up. Winston's looking at me right now because he's like, yeah, I know, that's my drone. But it's not even one you fly. It's just self-flying, and it knows where not to crash. So and it's like, that's a $15 thing. So
it's not your helicopter that's laying out,
it's not my Cox helicopter that made it all the way out to Sugarville circa probably 91. So I'd love to find that thing. It probably, like I said, it probably still hasn't come down yet.
Probably not.
Are you going to do a New Year's resolution?
Well, I started smoking again when I took this job at the school, and I
good for you.
That up,
Good for you.
I hadn't smoked since 2004, but one of my first weeks on the job, I started the job, and the next thing you know, the state inspector, they come in every 3 times a year, and this guy comes in and he shuts down a bunch of my buses, and I'm like, what do I do now? I got kids at school. I got to get them home. And I remember looking at Tim, and I says, I know I can't have a beer, but I'm going down the street and I'm getting a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
And he goes, you don't smoke? And I says, I do now. And so anyway, I thought I'd give him up right away, but it's hard, man. Don't start that crap. But,
well, they say nicotine actually raises your testosterone level quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go. At least it's a little bit of a trade-off.
But yeah, I just remember thinking, how am I going to get these kids home? But when I say he shut them down, one had I'd only been on the job, and I didn't know what I was looking for, but I'd only been on the job a short time. Oh, this one has a brake light out. This one, the heater didn't work. And by the way, I started in April, April, June-ish, and somewhere in there, I can't remember. But anyway, I just remember it was hot out that day, and the guy's like, well, the heater doesn't work on this bus. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't need it today.
Yeah, the windows are down.
And he goes, nope, that's a shutdown. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
And so Tim and I had to scramble to get these buses ready to go get them at the end of the day. And we scrambled just enough. And but I just remember thinking, what did I get myself into? I loved my city job. What was I thinking, And so, yeah, Tim and I scrambled, and got everything back together. But I'm like, man, I'm going to get a pack of cigarettes. I can't handle this stress. What am I thinking? And so the next day I come in, and we just went to town fixing things. But, yeah, that's one of the things I want to give up is my cigarettes.
Well, finish at least the pack you have.
Oh, yeah, that'll happen.
Right, don't throw it away. I mean, don't let it go to waste.
Yeah, they're too expensive for that, man.
What's a pack of cigarettes these days? $7 or something?
Try closer to $9 most of the time.
Wow, what a time to be alive, huh?
Yeah.
$9 cigarettes.
When I quit smoking, they were $4.30. When I started smoking back in the day, they were 98 cents a pack.
Jeez.
Now, mind yourself, I'm 47, and so yeah, they went up in a real big hurry there.
Speaking of time forgotten, what is the one thing that used to be part of Wilton that no longer is that you wish we still had around here?
One thing part of Wilton.
Like, was there a business or was there a thing, something you remember from way back in the day where you're like, man, that was really cool when Wilton had that?
Were you old enough for the arcade?
Where the cafe is now, right?
Here.
In this building?
Yeah.
There was an arcade in this building?
We had an arcade dance hall thing in here.
I don't remember that.
I think it was called the Village. Anyway, yeah, it was here, man. We had video games and there was a dance area.
Right where we're sitting.
Right where we're sitting.
We got to bring it back.
Yeah, it was right here, man.
I got to start buying arcade machines.
Yeah.
I got to get a GoFundMe going.
Yep, and then we had the one downtown, and of course we also used to have like 6 bars in town, but and of course they had arcades. But back in my day, you could walk in and play the video games. Now you got to be older to go into the bar. But
when you were growing up, was it 18 to drink beer?
Yeah, I believe so. And heck, I went into Renfro's. He had one video game in there. And that building's long gone. And then there was the Silver Dollar Saloon and the Copper Kettle, the restaurant across the street. They had a couple video games, and I mean it was a big thing.
I did not know that this building used to be an arcade and a dance hall.
And a dance hall. I can't remember who owned it, but yeah.
Was it a hopping place?
Oh, it was. It was. And then there was a lot of fights outside. But yeah, this was the place to be.
Oh, wow. I got to talk to Doc Ock, Lynn Ochiltree. He's got to have some pictures of that, right?
Yeah.
He's got to have some. I would love to find one picture of inside. So for everyone watching, I think you guys all know where we're at. We're at the what I call the Pit Building, right next door to Artie's, the law office building here. If anybody's got any kind of documentation or pictures or any just memories of this place being an arcade or dance hall, please let me know.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it was called the Village, but yeah.
That's wild.
I tell you, man, there's things that happened in Wilton that put us on the map, but people long forgot them.
Hey, real quick before you go, 100 years from now, when people think of Richie Creamer, what do you want them to remember about you? What you did for the town? Is it more, what is it? Like you're working your butt off for this town, and I know you're doing it for, you've got a job and security and all that, but like what's driving you and how do you want to be remembered?
Well, I'm hoping as a nice guy, but, I'm not always nice. But anyway, no, I just remember growing up like Richard Garrison and, like I say, Jerry Smith and all them, all these guys that just really put themselves out there for Wilton, and I just wanted to be that guy that is not necessarily remembered, but made his mark on the town to help make it better. And I feel I've done that. Like I say, the flag on the edge of town, the Freedom Rock, let alone just the potholes I filled, But,
you might have made a few of them.
Yeah. I mean, I did my time on the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, just different things, things like that. But, I just want to be that guy that at least hopefully made this place a little better. That's all I hope. I do remember Harold Snyder saying, well, once you die, you'll be remembered for about a month, and then occasionally your name will come up, and he goes, you just make your mark, and you hope like heck that, you get remembered once in a while. And, but no, Richard Garrison really kind of set the mark for me as to what to be when I worked for the city. And like I say, and Harold Snyder and just the guys in general, because I basically grew up with all of them as my mentor. Because my dad died when I was 18, and so the guys kind of just took me in, and that's how I ended up mowing grass for Harold Snyder. Was I actually owed him money, but anyway. But no, I just hope that I'm just remembered every once in a while. But at the same time, you know what? It takes a community to keep the community going. It takes a village, and so. I don't feel there's any one person that keeps the town going. Like I say, when I left the city, everybody kept saying, how are they going to operate without you? Well, they'll do just fine. They always say your obit will be, your job will be posted before your obit. And like I say, they'll do fine. Those guys, they know what they're doing. They're doing a great job. And same with the school. We mentioned Sam Mullins and Don Steffens. Those guys, they work their butt off, and their name comes up, but you just hope that you've at least done enough to just make it a better place. And if you're remembered, you're remembered. If you're not, well, you tried.
Well, I think you will be, Richie. I think I speak for the whole town when I say thank you. Don't take any days off. Don't retire. Keep working 7 days a week, because you are making a difference. You're making an impact on the town, and you made your mark on the town. Now you're making your mark within the community, within the school district. You're doing great things. Come drive for Richie. Richie needs some drivers, right? It's not all blizzards and, no. Zero viz, right?
Yeah, and I hope I wasn't too boring for you.
So. This was great. If nothing else, we learned how a water tower works, right?
And I did bounce around quite a little bit on you, so.
No, I like that. Then we don't get caught in the weeds too much on too many things. But Richie, you're doing great things. Thank you. Okay, and I mean that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that just kind of don't realize, people that are hiding in plain sight, that are wearing many, many hats. So keep wearing the hats, keep doing your thing. And
there's a lot of them in town.
Thanks, Richie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're back.